All right. Number 4 in the series, pricing MSP services, probably one of the most asked about but most complex parts of this whole process. And so it can be a huge impact on what quality you get. It can be a huge impact on the decision to make in terms that you suggest or get. So let's get into that. But as we know, services can vary from $50 a user, a node, however they price it, all the way up to $350 or more. And so what in the heck quantifies the difference? And we're going to dive right into that. And here's some of the big differences that I've seen. Number 1, 8x5 services versus 24x7 services. If you need 24x7, make sure it's in there. If you don't need it, make sure you're not paying for it. Now, I think at all times, some point, a business will need some kind of remote 24x7 services. I don't know, maybe you're running payroll and you happen to do it after hours, the system doesn't work. Know what the pricing impact is if you have to call in after hours, because it could be a huge bill, time and a half, 2x time, those kind of things. So make sure you understand what it is if you don't take 24x7. But my experience says most of the time you won't need it if you're not 24x7. So maybe paying those one-offs would be better than paying every month for 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is in the agreement. Secondly, what tools are included in their pricing that's bundled into that you don't have to pay for separately? So for example, Microsoft 365, almost every customer in today's world needs that because they get their email, your Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, those kind of things from it. So you need those kind of applications. Is it included in the MSP offer? Is it separate? Do you still pay for it yourself? What's the impact here? What's your cybersecurity inclusions? Are they paying for it? Is it all separate? Got to know that piece. Backup, recovery, those kind of applications. You need to know what the MSP is bringing to the table versus what you have to bring to the table. And it should be documented specifically in your agreement. Hardware. Is hardware included? And I'm going to give you a very specific example. Backup. Many times there's a local backup appliance that then pushes out to the cloud. So you should make sure that, if you're required to have that, is that included in their cost, or do you have to pay separately? But it could be everything from servers to laptops to switches to wireless access points. Make sure you know what hardware is included, what you're required to buy, and what you might have to buy in the future. Next, proactive tools. Monitoring the network and devices and responding before things go down. Typically involves remote secure access into your network. We can probably have a whole section on that. But do they have the tools that connect you in so that if you have a problem, they can remote in, see what you're seeing, and fix it on the spot versus dispatching somebody or having to do some other access? But there should be a pile of tools that MSPs provide that are monitoring things like 365 usage, hard drives, RAM, processors, intrusions, wireless access, just a few name of the things. I mean, it could be thousands of lines deep for sure. But if they don't have those tools in your network, all you're paying for essentially is labor. Well, they're giving you a labor deal. Well, that's great, but you don't want to be down, and you want them to be making sure you don't go down. They have to have the tools in place. If they're not including them, big warning sign. What's your service level agreement, or SLA? What is their response times? And this can be tricky because a lot of times they'll say, we answer the phone in 3 rings. Well, okay, they answer the phone, but that doesn't mean you're fixed. So typically SLAs mean time to diagnostics, time to resolution, those kind of things. So make sure you understand those. And then what happens if they don't meet their SLA? How's that work? Is there a credit that's involved? Is it a percentage of a month? Is it a percentage of the agreement? You should know. Redundancy in the organization, meaning that they're not, a lot of times they like to say, well, we give you a dedicated tech. Well, if he's not available, or she, then what happens? You should know, because a lot of times what they're doing is they're doing kind of a staff aug. So they're giving you a person, that's your person, but if they're not available, there is no number 2. Know what the redundancy is in the organization, and you're not paying more to access them, for sure. Maturity of the MSP, probably the biggest differentiator, but so if the MSP is mature, they should be probably in that $125 a user or a node per month or more. So like that's my opinion. That's a guess. But I can tell you, if you get under that, you should have some really big warning signs of what's included and what is not. They should have lots of questions right up front. How do you do business? You know, what are the problems that you're seeing? What kind of applications are you running? How do you add users? These kind of things. If they don't have a lot of questions for you, then that should be a big warning sign, because they're just throwing a price out and hoping it sticks. They could have kind of a strategy of starting you cheap and then escalating the price as an ongoing factor throughout the year. So if there's escalators, which are included in contracts many times, I've seen as high as 25% a year. You should know what they are. So they start you at, let's just say 50, by the time you get to the end of 3 years, you're paying 300. Well, that wouldn't be a fair contract. So make sure you call that out. Make sure, why would an MSP be doing that if they're cheaper? Potentially they could be driving revenue for their own company to sell the company, which means your support will suffer. So make sure you know what their strategy is behind it. And if they have super, super low costs, here's some kind of ideas to think about to kind of narrow in to make sure that you understand what's happening. One, if they have very few people, it means their overhead's not high, but then your redundancy is not high. If they're underpaying their team, that can be a big sign. You want people paid right. You want them to be qualified. And so if they're underpaying, it might feel like a good deal, but they won't stick around. So hang around in that. If they're not qualified workers, they're using help desk level techs to do on-site tech work. Big warning signs on that. They should have tier 2, tier 3 technicians, which, by the way, there is no definition of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So people can make it up. So make them quantify it. Are they cyber secure? Are they putting you at risk? That can be a huge factor, meaning if they have no cybersecurity on their end, there's no cost. Well, that makes the price cheaper, but it also makes the risk much higher. And you kind of get the gist of what's happening. I mean, you look at the cost of the organization and go, where are they saving? And if they're cutting corners, you're the one going to pay the penalty. What happens if they have a super high price? What should you be kind of looking for? It could be that they're a true expert in your business. They know your line of business. They have some specific value add, which could be very valuable to you, but they should be able to demonstrate it. So make sure you pay attention to it and make them prove it. Right? You're an industry expert in your industry. Make this company prove that they're worth the extra dollars, because it could be possible. Maybe they're including hardware, additional software, additional tools. They should be clarifying that for you so you know exactly what you're getting in the value. So let's verify the pricing models, things that you should know going into the contract. One, is it per node? Is it per PC? Is it per user? Or is it per device? You should know, because you say, well, PC is a device. Well, you're correct, but maybe they're charging you for everything, right? Maybe it's every switch, every AP, every kind of interaction. Well, if they're doing that, you need to know, because it could affect your price. Other questions that I put down here to ask, because I think they're important. The questions are the key, right? So, is your price significantly higher or lower than the other bids, and why? Ask them that question. They should know why. They're in this business. 2, if there is an onboarding project, or is it included? So you have to pay for some kind of onboarding project, an upfront fee, a certain amount, whatever. So make sure you check that out. What items on my network as a customer are not supported, right? Like, you want it in writing. You don't support this thing. Maybe, we've done a lot of small doctors' offices. So like an eye doctor, maybe it's an eye machine, which would be fair, right? Like, that should be supported by the vendor that provided that to you. So that's excluded, but you need to know that. The other thing is, you don't want them supporting it, because it's running a very proprietary piece of operating system. It might still be Windows, but you don't want them patching it, because it could break the machine. They should know what to do with that device. Are there any limited use items that you should be aware of? You just ask them that question, like, you get so many hours on-site or off-site, or number of calls, or number of tickets. Make sure you know what they are. What's the coverage on hardware? And for specifics, like, give them an example. Like, if my laptop stops working, like, how does this work? Do they take care of the warranty for you? Are you responsible for the warranty? Let's just say the unit's completely dead. I'll keep looking over here because my laptop's over here. But maybe it's completely dead. So then you have to, restore and get a new unit in place. Do you have to pay for that, or is that included in the service? Things you should know. Then there's what is the price if I go with a longer term or a shorter term? There's been examples where there is no discount, or there's no kind of penalties even for shorter term contracts. So instead of going a 3-year, you go with a 12 months or even 6 months, something like that. Remember, contracts can go both ways, so be careful on your negotiation on that. What's the penalties if I have an early termination? If I go out of business, if I merge with another company, what are the penalties for those agreements? You should know how much to add a user. So, if it's price per user, and they give you, $200 a month, and if you add another employee because you're growing your business, is it $200 a month? Is there an onboarding fee? What's the charges that I get for adding a user? And then the flip side of that question is that if I reduce my user count, is it the same amount? Now, see what I did there? I asked them to add because they want you to add, but then you ask them what happens if you decrease. It should be equal, or at least aren't close, unless they're including software tools that they're buying on your behalf, which they've already committed to terms to, which can get a little tricky. All right, now we're at the negotiation point. So how do I negotiate this with an MSP? First of all, you can negotiate the number of users, number of devices. Everybody's got, a UPS machine that sends out the UPS labels. Well, it may or may not need any kind of different software and management and monitoring, depending on your risk and whatnot. So you should know, but you could reduce that machine count because it's not an actual user. It's just a device that might run the UPS machine. Other things I've seen is a digital sign that runs up front that a digital sign company takes. Doesn't need to be part of your network. Like all these kind of devices. So make sure you know what the user per price is. Secondly, if we get straight on a price, a tactic that transparently I love from the seller standpoint, and I'm the guy that's selling it to you, would be if I sign today, can I get 2 months free, a 10% discount, whatever it is? Because this is the point where you can go, look, I'm right at that stage where I'm ready to buy. It's kind of a good last ask, and who knows what you might get out of those kind of asks. Then, what happens if I don't need the X service anymore? Meaning, they provide some kind of wireless management thing, and you see a point in time where you're not going to need wireless anymore. What happens if you remove it? You get credit on that, something like that. If I add a year, can you reduce your price? Right? Add a year to the term, they should be able to reduce the price. Might be worth it. And if I sign for this, I will sign for this price today, but I don't want 3 years. I want 18 months. A lot of folks, I probably would take that agreement. So, something in your pocket. All right, next, terms and conditions matter, right? It's not all about price because it could be the terms and conditions, and gosh darn it, you better understand them because this is where kind of the rubber meets the road. So, having somebody legal overview your contract is always the best recommendation. So if you have a lawyer or somebody that can review it, I always recommend that. So I would start with that. I'm not a lawyer, so know that. Secondly, AI can be a huge help on this. Ask it to review it and notify the things that you should be aware of. I hate to say this, but I bet a lot of folks just never read the terms and conditions. And that's a pretty good bet because I've done this a long time. People just put their John Hancock at the bottom of the page and they have no idea what they just agreed to. You should read them. I know you're not a lawyer. It's okay. Read them anyway just to know kind of what it's saying. And then last, what are your payment terms? Like net 30, net 10 requires direct deposit. Something like that. Make sure you know what the terms of payments are. All right, my final kind of generic category of some things to consider. When does the first bill come and when does support start? So if I sign your agreement today, does my support start today? Or does it start on the first of the month or after a project? Or when does it start? Secondly, when do I pay the first bill? Right? Because am I paying ahead or am I paying in arrears? That can affect how much money you're actually paying. So just know where you're at on that. Are there offboarding charges? Meaning that if you choose at the end of this agreement to go with another provider, is a current provider going to charge you something? And best practice say they probably will and should. Are projects included in the price? Again, I go back to the simplest component of a new laptop. So you get a new laptop. Do they charge you a project fee to set it up? Or is it just included in your managed service price? By the way, the best providers do not include it because you're going to want to get the best price on your monthly service. They don't include projects, but it can be a negotiation point. And finally, as a user, do I have to buy all my hardware through this MSP? Because they could be marking it up higher than what you expect. They could be buying brands that you don't want, those kind of things. So know if you're required to buy hardware to continue the support. So know what the limits are on that. All right, that's quite a bit on pure pricing and different things, but we will come back next time and cover our next subject. And that's my time with you.